5 famous words for live stream. We're live, as I'm sure you're all aware, the interwebs start pushing out,
Nice.
and I'm gonna give folks just like a minute or 2
Cool.
to join in. It's really good to be here. It's a hot day in Texas. Where are you in the country, Mike?
I'm in Bay Area, San Francisco.
In the Bay Area. Okay, okay, cool. So I think it's a little more pleasant than in Dallas, Texas right now.
Yeah,
So
I think.
cool. Well, I'm so grateful that you did this. I'm gonna give folks like 60 seconds to join. There's going to be a replay later, so folks can definitely catch up on what we talked about. Um, but yeah, so fun fact, everyone who's joining, this is Mike's first live stream. So welcome to Substack, Mike. And you're on the back end of things. Now we're putting you like in front of folks. So I appreciate you doing this.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Um, okay, let me just see here. I can see folks coming in. Oh, hey, Joe. I see Joe. I recognize Chris and Kevin. It's nice. This is what's nice about Substack. It's a very friendly place. Like you recognize folks, you can call them out and say hi. It's really good. So, um, okay, well, I see folks coming in, and we're just gonna jump right in. So today, I'm hosting Mike Cohen. I think he used to be called the head of data, and we're going to talk about like how things have changed in light of AI and how all those changes. But essentially, the publishing spectrum is my publication, and we're talking about publication intelligence this month. And it just happens. There's a lot of news around how people access their data now at Substack. And I reached out, and you were willing to jump on a call with me and just chat about all the changes about how Substack writers are accessing their data. So, we're going to talk about the new MCP. We're talking about the recommendations and onboarding, and just talk about like the nature of how AI is changing things pretty rapidly. Because I think you have an interesting front seat to that. So, um, the replay will be available for anybody who isn't able to stay the whole time. I will try to take questions at the end, but I'm going to try to stay focused so I can get through all of my material. And so we'll try and get to your questions at the end. So feel free to drop them in, but don't feel like I'm ignoring you if I don't pull your question in right away. So I'm going to turn over to Mike and let him just tell us briefly, like, who are you and what do you do at Substack?
Cool. Thanks for having me. Yeah, so I'm Mike Cohen. I've been at Substack for about 6.5 years. I started, we were really small. I was the first like data person to join Substack. And so yeah, my role has sort of evolved as Substack has evolved, I guess. Like, when I first started, we were trying to getting the house in order, trying to understand like what data we had, how do we store it, how do we, look at it, how do we analyze it, and so that's why originally I worked for the first 4 years mostly. I was just like all things data, a lot of data engineering work, and then about I guess 2.5 years ago, my role evolved into focusing more on AI and machine learning engineering more broadly. And concretely, what that means for Substack is like mostly focusing on like the ranking and recommendation side. We started to like build notes and build a feed of content. Like we wanted to make sure that that content that people saw was really really good and really really personalized. And so yeah, today like that's what I work on primarily is like in with like a bunch of people on the feed team. Um, and so everything that users see, whether it's the feed, onboarding suggestions, people whom you should follow or subscribe to, push notifications that you get, the category tabs that you see, all that stuff is backed by ML models that we've built over time, and evolved over time and continue to experiment on and keep trying to make better. And there's also like, behind this to make all that work, there's still the data platform, um, that has been in place now for a long time and that we use, to power all that stuff. And yeah, that's primarily what the team does now.
So when I'm publish a post or like I record an interview like this one, like what part of that experience like touches like your team's work? Is that
Um,
like anything? I guess I would assume subscribers interaction with a
mhm.
post.
Oh, I
But
see
is there
what you're.
anything actually maybe I should ask like what doesn't your work touch at Substack? Because I feel like it probably touches everything.
Yeah, it does touch a lot of things. I mean, it doesn't. I guess like where I don't. I mean, there are a lot of teams at Substack. I guess maybe is another way
Yeah.
to answer your question. So like like I said, I work primarily on like the feed and recommendations side of things, but there's a whole group of people that are working on this experience, this like video product. And there's a lot of really interesting, fascinating things that product does that I don't understand how it works at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's like the whole like creator tools. There's a payments team. We have like our whole like standards and enforcement team, and there's a bunch of like spam and detection. And so there's a lot of stuff that I don't know about, and then a lot of stuff that I don't do.
Yeah.
My purview is really sort of like the home feed, and then sort of like your inbox experience, basically. Yeah.
Well, can you can you tell us um for those of y'all who don't read the publishing spectrum, when I first like read your note about the sequential model last year you were the head of data then, and then kind of like I think you were still called the head of data because I put you as that, but then your role has evolved, right? It's been evolving. Perhaps it was just a name change, but I'm curious, like how has can you tell me a little about, like, the change there? Like, what you've seen change about what you expected data to look like now that AI is in the mix?
Oh, yeah, I'm trying to think when my title officially changed. I think it's been about 2.5 years, so I think my title had changed by the time I had posted that,
Okay,
but
sorry about
nonetheless,
that.
that's okay. The crux of your question is, like, what's changed in our
Yeah,
data, and I would say, like, um not like a there's not like, "Oh, wow, like, AI is here, now data is this," but, like, I would say just sort of like we are the types of models that we're trying to build are, like, more sophisticated and require, better tracking, better impression understanding of,
yeah,
like, okay, so and so saw this, they saw this, they interacted or engaged with this, they didn't, interact or engage with that. They had a positive interaction here, a negative interaction here, so all that stuff is just, like, nuts and bolts data engineering, and then it's like how do we like wield that into making a better understanding of users such that we can help them find stuff that we think that they'll enjoy more.
yeah.
Does that may
Um,
answer your question? I don't know if I skirted it.
yeah, well, I think I for someone who works in the data side of, like, trying to interpret it for publications, the nature of, like, accessing the data and interpreting it has been it's just very different depending on what a publication is doing or trying to accomplish, right? And so
Mhm.
I'm I'm curious I was curious to see if your role had felt any impact to how at least publications are working with their data differently. Just because the access to it now is definitely very different, especially with the MCP coming in. Because like,
Mhm.
um, from my point of view, like the ability for publications to understand what was happening in their
Yeah.
subscribers and their thing, we were querying the CSV just
Mhm.
because it's so minute. So I'm just curious, like, what do you yeah, like has there it seems like a big shift to me. I'm just curious
Yeah.
what you think about it because it's a different access to the data through the MCP especially.
Yeah, and I think you're right, and I think like, but I think it's also al- in line with sort of like how we've always tried to operate in some ways, which is like your audience is yours, and so like your data is also yours, and
Yeah,
we've had feedback over the years that we want richer analytics or better this or better that, and
sure.
that's a little unclear what that means, but like this is hopefully an attempt to try to like let people try to get at what they actually want and whatever that is in a more unstructured manner. And I would say our dashboard or a dashboard that we provide for publishers is like our best guess at what we think, hey, these are the top 20 questions that we think you might have or something like that. But the hope, I guess, with the MCP is that, or maybe it removes a barrier or a bottleneck for saying what's the 21st question that you might have. And yeah, so that's kind of what the hope is with starting to offer that type of service for publishers.
Yeah. I I've been software adjacent in my life, so that's why people are like, "Why is a publishing advisor talking about dashboards so much?" The ability to like you said, like capture all of the things that every publication might need. That has been a real limitation across all software that I've ever worked in is like how do you create one that works? So
Hmm.
I'm I'm really curious. Um, so like the MCP is available right now to best-selling publications.
Hmm.
Um, like what do you anticipate that how do you anticipate that evolving over time? Like, obviously, it's anybody's guess where AI is going to kind of blow doors open next. But
Yeah.
I'm just curious what Substack's sort of view on that is. Like,
Yeah, I mean, you're right. That's where we started, and I think that's the intent there is to sort of like learn safely, and try to figure out what works and what doesn't work. And I think the intent is to broaden it over time, also I think like as everyone's figuring out sort of MCP protocols in general, or like how to work with these like there's a certain set of tools that we've launched with, and but there's like a tool built into it right now that lets us know or files a report when it's unable to successfully help someone. And so like
oh,
the wish list of things to add or to be able to do sort of like writes itself, which is a nice feature.
yeah.
And we'll see. I don't know what the like roadmap is, but that's basically like a part of the thing by design is to try to like figure out what people are looking to do and go from there.
Okay, that's really interesting. So you're getting feedback. So like if I query and it's like I'm not quite sure I can access that data, you'll get in the notification. That's actually really helpful.
Yeah.
Uh cool. Okay. Well, I'm curious to see can you tell us like whether that's going to be available to non-bestsellers soon or what kind of
I,
mode is that on the system?
Yeah, I'm not sure, to be honest with you. I haven't been super close to the roadmap there. But again, like I said, I think the intent is to try to like figure out if it's working well, and then and broaden over time.
That you mentioned. That sounds great. So I want to shift a little bit to the sequential modeling
Sure.
sort of like concept. And for those of y'all who don't know, like back in November, Mike wrote this really great post about how just in general, I think like across all social media networks, they're trying to address the fact that like maybe humans are more dynamic than like our old models accounted for. And you go into depth around what that looked like. And one of the things that I really enjoyed about reading about that update was that the sequential architecture like understands reading or even content consumption as a journey that unfolds. And so I don't know, what struck me is that, like, it feels like an attempt to model something that's a little more human, so, like, mood, momentum, exploratory states, and I'm just curious, like, if we're trying to model something more human, like, what work went into creating that, and, like, how did you decide what human signals counted? Like, could you just tell us a little more about that?
Yeah. I guess like the we didn't come up with this architecture. Maybe as as the lead off point. We did a lot of research. We did a lot of reading of like what other great companies were doing or looking at doing, and so we had a lot of you know I forget what the expression is, like shoulders of giants to stand on or something like that. Like where we were like, oh, okay, this is like kind of like this is what why this is good, and we think that we should take a bet on trying this as well. So maybe let's just start with that, like, and then um, in terms of like then we sort of like, okay, how do we take this idea and apply it to our feed, to Substack in general, and you sort of just I don't really know if there's like a magic to it where you're just like, okay, well, what are the things that people can do? They can see things, they can click on things, they can like things, they can read things deeply. They can restack, they can reply. Like they're just sort of like enumerating like all these. They can hide, they can block, they can mute. Like there's just sort of like a certain set of actions that we can sort of enumerate and be like, okay, those all make sense. Those all make sense. These all make sense. And sort of just start to like build up from there. And and there's things that we started with, and there's things that we've added over time since then. Like as new features have come to light, like saving posts, saving notes, all this stuff. Kind of like it's an ever evolving organism in some ways
Yeah.
that we're constantly iterating on, constantly getting feedback on, or constantly being like, oh, we forgot this thing. Like how stupid are we? Like we should not do that. And yeah, so there's sort of just like a bunch of things that go into it, and a bunch of like evolution and experimentation to try to make it better. And I guess by make it better, what I mean fundamentally is like what our goal is to not get people to unlike I guess like other algorithms where it's like the goal is to try to get people to like click on an ad or spend time such that they see more ads. Like our goal is really just to get people to find and discover stuff that they love. And what they love that takes many forms. We want people to subscribe, we want people to pay, we want people to develop these like deep relationships with people with the things that they get introduced to.
Um, is there like a waiting for like inside the signals? Like a like is more passing, but like a restack is like an endorsement, and so it weights differently inside
Not not
or versus
not
a comment.
Yeah, not exactly. Just because like for different individuals, like there, you could imagine there's like people who just like every single thing, or there's people who reply to every single thing, and so we need to be sort of like aware and cognizant of that. And so for each individual, each like depending on kind of who you are, depending on like your persona, if you will, like will kind of different dynamic weights depending on who you are and what you do.
Hang on. When I was refreshing on kind of the specifics that you shared, I had a moment of curiosity. I was like, "Is there a way for me to know who Substack thinks I am?
Uh-huh.
Like how have they decided like what I'm interested in now versus what I'm interested in like a couple weeks?
Yeah,
Where could I influence that and make sure I've covered all my bases?
yeah, there is not, and in fact, we don't have that either. Like the way the model works is that like it takes all this data and kind of like synthesizes it down into like sort of a effectively like a big list of numbers or matrix of numbers, but it's not really like intelligible to the naked eye, and it really sort of only means something in the context of like the trained model. So I guess like the the not fun answer to your question. There's no real way to be like, oh, you are, person X or person Y. But hopefully the model can figure that out.
You can figure that out. Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think what I liked about how you described it is that, just because you read a piece of poetry, you're not now labeled as poetry, like
No.
moving forward, you have a train of it coming toward you, that it is more of a dynamic. And I was like, "Oh, I wonder how they track that." So, but also, I guess I'm also sending lots of different feeds to it as well all day long, so it would be dynamic.
Yeah.
Well, so we had a handful of reader questions submitted before we chatted, and a
Mhm.
lot of it was around like the onboarding process and kind
Mhm.
of like the recommendations and like how a reader comes into this the ecosystem, for lack of a better term.
Sure.
'Cause and that's a real draw for people who choose to centralize their work on Substack, is that network is very interesting to them because it's built differently, and it feels, for a lot of people, it feels refreshing, right? It feels refreshing compared to like being on Twitter where you're bombarded. So I'm curious, like when a new reader like picks their interest categories, like how are the recommended publications chosen? Like, can you tell us a little more about like the thinking behind that? Because it looks like there's a couple folks submitted examples where they have sometimes somebody gets stuck in the recommendations, like they're recommended everywhere, and it feels like just a glitch, but we're not sure how that works. I'm wondering what you can share with us about
Oh,
that.
interesting. I'd be curious to learn more about that, especially if it's a glitch. But
Yeah. Yeah.
in general, it's like the onboarding flow is one that is really important and one that we are trying to kind of like constantly iterate and improve upon. But it's a lot less, I think, like curated than people would assume. So like you know the pool of eligible publications, I suppose that are available there is really like very vast. It's like any like active publication on Substack, and I forget what like all the like the base parameters are, but it's something like have you is the publication not dormant? Is sort of like the idea, and then from there it's sort of like personalized based on like what interest the person has selected, their their geography, their locale, so like it's also, maybe I should say, one of the harder problems because in some cases it's like a brand new user and we know very very little, and so we're trying to work with like the least amount of data. Like whereas like if you've curated your feed for like a month, like your feed should hopefully be a little bit more dialed than like an onboarding situation. But Um, yeah, I mean that it's basically like trying to cold start on a new user and use what signal we have to try to find the best things that will that the user will not just click on, but also but like really in that case in particular, like find a deep like a meaningful subscription. So like they'll subscribe and stay engaged with that publication or that yeah that pub yeah.
Well, I can share more details when we're offline about this
Yeah.
one because it feels like a glitch because it's like a much smaller publication that's just
Oh,
getting
interesting.
consistently recommended, like seeing drastic growth,
Interesting.
whereas like everybody else
I
is
would
kind
love
of
if you
seeing
could
that.
share that. That'd be
Yeah,
great.
we can chat about that because from what you're explaining to me is that it's it almost sounds like when well, let me make sure I'm saying it back that like if a user is fairly new and fresh, it would be harder to make recommendations that would be more
We work with the data that we have, right? So
or the
like
data that you had. So is there a scenario where like there could just be like a primed audience for this new publication that there's just a lot of readers that are already looking for that kind of publication and it's just kind of zeroing to those readers in a in
it
mass?
is I guess technically it could be possible, but it would be worth probably debugging the specific
Yeah.
case. But that's not the maybe I should say that's not like the intent.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. That's helpful. So I'm gonna try and get this right. This is really specific, and I was like, I think this is a good one, but I'm gonna have to break it down into chunks.
Okay.
It's about how readers engage
Okay.
uh, when they arrive through search versus a direct link someone shared. Like, do you see any difference in how those readers engage? Like, is there any way that Substack's tracking that to understand like the quality of a reader? So if I need to say it again, I can.
So I think your question is when people sign up for someone via search versus via something else. Is that
Like a direct link, like a recommendation, like someone who referred them versus someone who just uh
right? That's a very good question. I don't know that I have like a holstered answer off the top of my head for how that works, but I guess I could say I think that is something that the data ought to let you be able to suss out. And whether or not it does in the dashboard or via MCP, I'm not confident of, but could happily look into.
cool.
Does that answer? I'm not
Yeah.
trying to.
Yeah,
I don't
it's
want
a
to say
really
anything that I don't know confidently, and I don't know confidently about
that
that one.
no, I prefer a I'm not sure
Yeah,
than a guess. So
I'm big on I don't know. It's when I don't know.
that's okay. Well, I think just generally, like, is there anything that like a new publication can do to become like more recognizable inside the recommendations network
Yeah,
and that onboarding process that a new reader goes through to get recommendations?
definitely. I mean, I think like one of the key things or like the best things to do is to just start putting out content, start publishing content, getting stuff that is discoverable, and make sure that your categories that you set for yourself are accurate, because those are those will help people when they're specifying their interests, like kind of gravitate or get pulled towards that, and then but this sounds sort of like um I'm not sure what the right adjective is, but like self-referential in some ways, but like just start growing and like start whether that's through like doing a live with someone whom you know or restacking someone or like um some type of collaborative effort with people, but just like finding ways to connect and collaborate like with real people, real other publications such that you can kind of organically grow your list. I mean, like I know that doesn't sound that's probably not like a it's not a sexy answer, but it's the real answer because like the way as if you do organic growth like that's gonna help like bolster your exposure and then good things happen downstream from there.
Yeah. Okay. Let me see. How I'm this is a question you're allowed to say you don't know, but like inside like the onboarding recommendations, like how big is that pool? Like how does that what does that look like?
I am not 100% certain, but I would say it's over a million. There's definitely like over a million
Yeah.
things or people that could be recommended there, and then whether which ones end up getting recommended to whom. I'm not sure like what the proportions are.
Does Substack have any recommendations on how to pick the category that most closely resembles what you're writing about? Because I've noticed different ways for me to filter my feed. Like one is
Mhm.
writing craft, and I'm like, I immediately went to see if there's now a writing craft, you know, category, and there's not right now. But I'm just curious, like, what advice would you have for someone who's like a little more niche but can't quite find their category?
You're saying like how
How do
is there a way for us to help writers pick the best category for them?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
No, I don't think there is a good way for that right now, but it's a great idea. And it's a great idea, and we have a hackathon coming up, so thank you for the idea.
cool. Cool. Yeah, I think it'd be helpful, just because I understand the nature of, like, going too narrow inside the categories, like that like, books have necessary, like,
Mhm.
parameters on how far you go, otherwise it's hard to rank, but I'm curious that would be really helpful, just
Yeah,
because there are folks doing really good work, but they're like, I'm not really business, but I'm not really education, but, like, what would the tiebreaker be on business versus education if they chose?
yeah.
I think that would be
I
helpful
think
for
it's an excellent idea, and without making any promises, I will say
totally fine.
I will think about it
I know
because
how hackathons go.
I love
You
good
never
ideas, and
you
then
never know.
fishing for good
Yeah,
ones, so this is a good one.
yeah. Um, so here's one, I think one final, like, hopefully this is like a softball. So, on the back end, folks can see, like, their audience overlap. So,
Uh-huh,
like, overlap 20% with this person, 21%.
right.
A lot of folks tend to overlap with the same publication. So, like,
Oh, interesting.
a lot of us have, something with, in common with Heather Richardson Cox, I think is her name.
Uh-huh, Heather Cochran,
But
interesting, yeah.
yeah, yeah, there you go, thank you. I knew I was gonna flip that. But, like, they write about fashion, so, like, and she's a very large publication, so, like,
Mhm,
the
mhm,
the idea of audience overlap being a way to collaborate with folks doesn't work for smaller publications, so, like,
right.
I'm just curious, is there a more useful scale that could be introduced there? And I know there is a way to see referrals from smaller, like, we could see where referrals come
Yeah,
from for other
yeah.
publications, but, I just wanted to ask if, Substack had any ideas on, like, helping, sub 10,000 readers, like, find
That's
audience overlap.
Yeah, that's a good call out and a good point. And I don't have anything off the top of my head. I actually am a little unfamiliar with like how the tool works today. But if it's like I think if I recall correctly, it's sort of like active subscribers of both publications, where it's private, like where the privacy is not, or sorry, where it's non-private, where it's a public subscription, because you can also have private subscriptions on Substack, and so we respect that in showing those numbers.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that's an interesting point, and I can't remember in the dashboard how many we show off the top, like, in
I think it's 5. I think
5 or
it's,
6.
like, 20,
Okay,
yeah, 20, 40, 60, 80, 100. I think it's, like, like, it adds up to more or less 100, uh
percent.
Uh, yeah, something like that. So you can see where your audience overlap is. And I think I've ended up collaborating, like Sarah Faye and I
Yeah,
did collaboration. That was fantastic. But everybody else, it's a little harder to get.
yeah. Yeah, it's another good thing that, again, though, that, like, we want to improve upon, like, and coming up with ways to, like, have suggested collaborations between folks is something that we've bantered about, and kind of kicked the tires on, but hasn't come to see light of the day yet, but I think that type of stuff to me is super exciting to work on, and, like, and I just think, in the course of time, those type of things will become reality, and I don't know when. There's a lot of stuff to do, but I would be really excited to have more like like suggested collaboration people and stuff like that outside of just your audience overlap.
That is something we're talking about in the publishing spectrum is like, how could we find overlap inside for people who have a little more of a lower, they're not a broad
Right.
niche, like basically doing like a public brainstorming about like what makes an actual good interview series. Like what
Mhm.
helps you actually ask good questions if you do have audience overlap and just like
Yeah.
helping people build those skills. So if we could have the data to help us narrow that down, that would be incredibly cool.
Yeah.
And I'm building a Christmas list
Yeah.
I'll send over later.
Yes,
Um,
please do, 'cause this is like I said, this is landing at a good time, for our next week, we have some hackathon
cool,
time. Yeah,
cool. Well, those are all of my questions for you.
cool.
Let me see if anybody, if you've thought of anything while we're chatting. Let me just go through the chat really quickly. Um, Kevin says, "Great insights, Mike. Can listeners to this live get access to the MCP if we're not a bestseller yet? What if we promise to give helpful
Yeah.
feedback?" Put them on the spot a little bit.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah,
good I saw
I
that
know.
one when it came in it gave me a
Yeah,
miss. I am not close enough to that product to be able to offer that, but I could try to ask and take a look, but, no guarantees.
no guarantees. Yeah, it is. I'm curious. Has anybody used? I've been using the MCP. Like, it'd be interesting to hear how if anybody on here has used it. Have any questions or feedback on that. I'm really enjoying it. I think it's definitely a game changer. I feel like it creates like a lot of questions for folks who haven't ever like built that publication and intelligence of the way of working with it. But it definitely, I feel like it's going to change the way we think about dashboards, like in software
Mhm.
in general.
Yeah,
Uh, Let me see. Uh, what about data for audio posts?
yeah.
Yeah, when we read our posts, we don't know how many people listen to them. Is there any data coming for that?
It's a great feedback. There is data when we're not surfacing it, so we should, and I don't, uh,
Yeah.
another great
It
idea.
yeah, I should also
Um,
mention that, like, it's pretty hard to track, so it makes sense to me that it would be somewhat easier to track if it's an audio only post, but, like, embedded audio feels
mhm,
even harder to, like, track because 'cause I've had people wanna do, like, creative sort of post with interjected audio throughout written
totally,
content, and we don't have any way to measure unless we put some sort of, like, like, something in the URL where we can kind of pull the data from there to see if it got
totally.
more downloads, but, um,
Yes,
it's
excellent.
definitely cool. That'd be really helpful to know about audio
Yeah,
because
yeah,
folks put a lot of
I completely agree.
cool. Cool. Let me see. Anybody else? Well, let's see. Chris says, "How about a way to differentiate open rates for different mediums, like text posts versus video posts?"
Yeah, I think there might be a way to sniff at
I
that in the dashboard currently. If you look at either the posts view, I think you can sort by open rate, and then you might have to kinda connect your dots, for, like, looking at the post to see which kind is what, but I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah. Um, that should be. I think there's a way for you to see the podcast data. There is a way to see that, but that would be different than just audio attached.
Um, yeah,
I can look that up later, Chris. I can try to answer that in the replay. And Jen's asking, is there data for embedded audio and posts? Yeah, I
I don't
don't
think
think
so.
so because
Yeah,
it's pulled in through the main designation of the
yeah,
post.
but it's good feedback.
Yeah. Anything else for our Christmas wish list before I let Mike go? Yeah, I'm the wheels are turning.
Good, good, good. Christmas will hopefully come in
Yeah.
July.
Let's hope so. Yeah. Okay. Let's see. Let's see. Jeremy says, as far as I've seen on my own dashboard, there's still no way to figure out how many people are listening to the audio voiceover version when a writer records his own voiceover. That would be nice to have to know whether it's worth recording voiceovers. Yeah.
Totally.
Yep. I think, well, we've got that on the list. It would be helpful to know because there is a lot of, it's definitely a production step that people take
Yeah.
in order to record it. So that would be helpful to know. Thanks, Jeremy. That's helpful. We will get that. See that.
Yeah. Maybe anecdotally as a subscriber to many Substacks, I always appreciate a voiceover, so
Yeah. Yeah,
I
it's, just yesterday I was listening to one and it was Rona Maynard, and she's covered it in such a good cadence that I literally sat, like, enraptured for a good 8 minutes, and I was like, good
totally,
for you, like, you pulled me in, you got me."
totally.
Oh, it's
Yeah, it's
definitely
special. It's really special.
yeah. Okay, folks. Well, I think we're gonna wrap up. I am gonna do a replay. This will be free for everybody to watch. And I'll be pulling together some of our Christmas list data wishes and yeah, it was nice to have you, Mike. I really appreciate you
Yeah.
being willing to make some time in your schedule. And yeah, thanks for reading the publishing spectrum, y'all. Hope to see you soon.
Thank you so much.
All right. Bye, Mike.
Bye bye.